Jenna Thompson was at her limit. She hadn't eaten a proper meal in 3 days, and hunger mixed with exhaustion sat on her like a heavy coat she couldn't take off. Her sneakers were falling apart, every step scraping her sore feet, and her stomach growled so loudly she had to wrap her arms around herself to quiet the noise. She wandered aimlessly through Chicago's West Loop, scanning every corner for a help-wanted sign, or someone kind enough to give her a chance. Cleaning, delivery, anything. A reset. Just one opportunity. As she bent down to fix her shoelace, she noticed something by the lamppost. A sleek, dark leather wallet. It looked expensive. She picked it up with shaky fingers. Inside, it was packed with cash. Neatly folded bills. More than she could count. Just one of them could get her a hot meal. All of them. A motel room, clean clothes, maybe even a chance at normal. But among the money were business cards and documents. The name on the card froze her. Grant Delaney. Jenna knew that name. Chief Executive Officer of Delaney Enterprises, billionaire tech mogul. He had once been on the cover of Forbes, and there, right in her hand, were his personal details, including his home address. She took a deep breath. Everything inside her screamed with need. But louder still was her grandmother's voice, echoing like a compass in the storm. Do what's right, even when no one sees. Honesty will always be worth more than money. Her hands trembled as she closed the wallet. She couldn't keep it. She just couldn't. It took her almost 3 hours to walk to the address listed on the card. It was a gated estate on the outskirts of the city, with towering hedges and a steel security gate that looked like it belonged in a movie. Jenna's mouth went dry just looking at it. She pressed the intercom. Nothing. She clapped her hands. Finally, a tall man in a suit appeared behind the gate, eyes sharp with suspicion. "What do you want?" he asked coldly. "I need to speak with Mr. Delaney," she said. He scoffed. "Mr. Delaney doesn't take visitors, especially not from—" He eyed her tattered hoodie and dirt-streaked face. "Your crowd." Jenna flushed with shame, but stood her ground. "Please," she said. "It's important. I'm not asking for anything. Just tell him someone needs to speak with him. If he says no, I'll leave." The guard rolled his eyes. "Lady, this isn't a charity. Try the shelters downtown." But something in Jenna's voice, her determination, her stillness, gave him pause. With a grunt, he muttered, "Whoa, wait here," and walked off. Jenna stood alone, clutching the wallet like it might vanish. The mansion loomed in front of her like another universe. She blinked hard. She would not cry. Not now. Inside the mansion, Grant Delaney was reviewing quarterly reports when a knock interrupted him. "Sir," the guard said, "there's a woman at the gate. Looks homeless. Says she needs to talk to you. Wouldn't give a name." Grant was ready to dismiss it outright. But something about the way the guard said it, not annoyed but intrigued, made him pause. "I'll see her," he said finally. Jenna saw the gate open and a man approach, tall, immaculately dressed, commanding. Grant Delaney. He stopped a few feet from her, eyes narrowed, curious. Without a word, Jenna held out the wallet. "I found this on West 13th Street this morning." Grant took the wallet, flipping through it. Everything was there. The cash, the cards, even a folded sticky note with his assistant's personal number. "You didn't take anything," he said, almost to himself. "It wasn't mine," Jenna replied simply. He studied her. Worn sneakers, tired eyes, honesty radiating from her like heat. "What's your name?" "Jenna." "And why bring it back?" Her voice caught. "Because it was the right thing to do." He was quiet. Then, turning to the guard, he said, "Open the gate." "Sir?" "She's coming in." Jenna stepped back, startled. "There's no need. You returned something priceless. Let me offer you something small in return. Tea, maybe? Something to eat? She hesitated, then nodded once. Inside, the mansion smelled like lemon polish and linen. Jenna perched on the edge of an oversized sofa. A few minutes later, Grant returned with tea and a small plate of croissants. She took it with a soft, "Thank you." It was the first warm food she'd had in days. "Do you live nearby?" he asked. "Actually, I don't live anywhere." Grant frowned. "I lost my job," she explained. "Then my grandma passed. It all went downhill. Rent, bills, everything. After that, no one wanted to hire me." "But you still returned the wallet," he said quietly. She nodded. He was quiet for a long moment. "I want to help you," he said. She stiffened. "I don't want charity." "It's not charity. It's gratitude. What do you need?" "A job," she said. "That's it. Just a chance." Grant stood up slowly. "I'll think of something. Wait here." As he left the room, Jenna looked down at untouched croissant. She had no idea that her decision on that sidewalk would change the course of her entire life. Jenna sat alone in the lavish living room, her hands folded in her lap, still holding the empty teacup. Everything around her looked too expensive to touch. Velvet chairs, gold accents, marble floors. It felt like a museum. Just then, she heard the soft patter of footsteps. She turned, surprised to see a little boy standing in the hallway. He couldn't have been older than 6. Pale blue pajamas with rocket ships. A toy truck clutched in one hand. His eyes were big and curious. "Hi," Jenna said gently. The boy took a tentative step forward. Then another. "What's your name?" he asked in a soft voice. "Jenna." "What's yours?" "Liam." She smiled. "That's a great name. Is that truck fast?" He nodded and plopped down on the rug. She slowly sat beside him. "Want to test it on a ramp?" she whispered. Liam's eyes lit up. She grabbed a cushion and propped it up like a slope. He sent the truck flying. It bumped into a leg of the coffee table and flipped over. He giggled. A real, warm, belly-deep laugh. Jenna laughed too, and from the hallway, unseen, Grant watched, frozen. It had been 3 years since Liam had laughed like that. Not a smirk, not a forced smile, but a laugh, a real one. Ever since Emily, his late wife, passed away in that tragic car accident, Liam had gone completely silent. No babysitter, no therapist, no teacher had been able to reach him. But now, here was a stranger, a homeless woman, making his son laugh. Inside the living room, Jenna and Liam were building obstacles for the truck. He was stacking cushions while she helped him balance a ruler across a footstool like a bridge. "Do you think it'll make it?" he asked, pointing at the ramp. "Only one way to find out, Captain," she grinned. He sent the truck flying again. It flipped and crashed. They both laughed out loud. Grant stepped in quietly. Jenna turned and immediately stood up. "I'm sorry. He came to talk to me, and—" "Don't apologize," Grant said, voice softer than before. That was the most beautiful thing I've seen in years." Liam turned and ran over. "Dad!" The truck jumped. Jenna made a ramp. Grant blinked, overwhelmed. "Did it really?" he asked, kneeling beside his son. Liam nodded proudly. "It was so cool." Jenna glanced at Grant, unsure. "Is he okay?" she asked softly. Grant's eyes lingered on Liam, who was now setting up a garage under the coffee table. "He's better than he's been in a long time." Then he turned to her with a new intensity. "I said I'd think of something I could do for you. I think I found it." She frowned. "What do you mean?" Grant looked toward his son. "Liam hasn't connected with anyone in years. Not one person. Until now. He laughed with you. He trusted you." He turned back. "I'd like to offer you a job, here, as Liam's caregiver. You'll have a place to stay, food, a salary, and stability. But more than anything, I want you to be part of his life. He needs someone real. And somehow, he picked you." Jenna's eyes widened. This was too much. Too fast. Too unreal. "You really trust me?" she whispered. "I don't trust easily," Grant admitted. "But my son just showed me I can trust you." She looked at Liam again. He was now drawing a truck with colored pencils. His tongue stuck out in concentration. Jenna swallowed hard. This could be her chance. "I accept," she said quietly. Grant smiled and extended his hand. She shook it, firmly, with purpose. "Welcome," he said. That night, Jenna lay in a real bed for the first time in months. Soft sheets, a warm blanket, pajamas that smelled like fabric softener. It felt like a dream. But more than the bed, it was the feeling of being safe, of being needed, of maybe finally belonging somewhere. She stared at the ceiling, replaying Liam's laugh in her mind. Maybe, just maybe, this was the beginning of something. The next morning, Jenna walked slowly down the grand staircase. Her bare feet touched the plush carpet, and every step felt like she was walking through someone else's life. In the kitchen, a warm aroma greeted her. "Good morning, dear," said a poised woman behind the counter. "Sleep well?" Jenna nodded shyly. "Better than I have in weeks, actually." "I'm Delia, the housekeeper," the woman said with a kind smile. "Mr. Delaney usually takes his coffee at 7. Liam sleeps a bit later. He's our little sleepyhead." Jenna sat down slowly. Delia handed her a plate with warm toast and a cup of tea. "No one goes hungry in this house," she said. Jenna's hands trembled slightly as she took the cup. This still felt unreal. Later, Delia led her to the sunlit backyard, where a small porch overlooked the green lawn. "He likes to play here. Doesn't talk much, but he has his moments." Almost on cue, Liam appeared from the hallway, dragging his toy truck. Still in pajamas, he saw Jenna and immediately gave her a small smile. "Hi," he said, sitting down beside her as if it were routine. She smiled and joined him on the floor. "The truck's broken," he announced. "Let me see," she said, taking it gently. The front wheel was loose. This calls for some magic tape." He tilted his head. "What's that?" She lowered her voice like sharing a secret. "Tape that fixes anything, even space shuttles." Liam laughed softly, then ran into the house. He returned moments later, proudly holding a roll of regular tape. "Will this work?" "It will now," she smiled. "This is emergency magic tape." As they fixed the toy together, Grant watched silently from the second-floor balcony, a cup of coffee in his hand. His eyes never left them. There she was, sitting barefoot on the grass, hair pulled back with an old elastic, laughing with his son. A woman who had walked in off the street. A woman who had done what therapists and specialists couldn't. That afternoon, he called her into his office. "Jenna, could you come here for a minute?" She stepped in slowly, unsure. "Yes, sir?" "You can call me Grant," he said without looking up from his laptop. "How was your morning?" She smiled. "Liam's amazing. Quiet but observant. Smart. Lonely, too." Grant leaned back in his chair. "You seem to understand children." "I don't know about that, but I used to be one. One that felt pretty alone, too." He looked at her thoughtfully. "You didn't just take a job. What you've done for Liam is more than work. It's human." Jenna lowered her eyes. "I don't do this to earn anything. I understand how it feels. To hurt quietly." He nodded. "That's exactly what he needs. And maybe, what I need too." The following days settled into a rhythm. Mornings playing in the garden, lunchtime stories, afternoon drawings with quiet music in the background. And slowly, like the petals of a flower, Liam began to bloom. He talked more, laughed often, even hummed lullabies when he thought no one was listening. And Grant noticed everything. He started coming home earlier, put away his phone, spent more time just watching, just being. And every time he looked at Jenna, something stirred, a feeling he hadn't allowed himself to feel in years. One night, after Liam had fallen asleep, Jenna tiptoed into the kitchen, craving a snack. She stopped when she saw Grant already sitting there, a glass of wine in hand. "Sorry," she said. "I didn't mean to intrude." "You're not," he said. "Sit. Want some tea?" She nodded. He poured her a cup, set it gently in front of her. "You adjusting, okay?" "More than I expected," she said. "It still doesn't feel real." "It's real for Liam," he said, watching her. "He's different. And I don't know how to thank you for that." "You don't have to." He hesitated. "Have you ever thought about studying? College?" She blinked, caught off guard. "That was always a dream. But after my grandma passed, survival came first." Grant leaned forward, elbows on the table. "What if I told you I could help?" "Why?" "Because you're helping my son. And not with strategies or degrees, but with something that can't be taught. Empathy. Patience." Jenna stared at the cup in her hands. "You're not just passing through our lives. You're changing them. Maybe it's time someone helped you live yours." The next morning, she found an envelope on the breakfast table. Her name was written in elegant script. Inside, a company ID badge, a bank card, and a printed contract. Salary. Full benefits. First payday. Monday. She held it against her chest. It wasn't charity. It was trust. Just then, Liam ran in, waving a drawing. "I made this for you." She knelt beside him. It was a picture of a house, a smiling sun, 3 stick figures holding hands. "Who's this?" she asked. Liam pointed. "Me. You. Dad." Jenna bit her lip. "It's beautiful," she whispered. Liam threw his arms around her neck. "You're like magic." She hugged him back, voice thick with emotion. "So are you, little one." Jenna's bond with Liam is growing stronger. But what about Grant? Will feelings start to surface? Find out in part 4, coming up next. That afternoon, the house felt different. The silence that used to haunt its walls had been replaced with the sound of toy trucks rolling across hardwood floors, bursts of laughter, and the occasional squeal of victory when Liam's block tower didn't fall. Jenna followed him into the living room, carrying pillows that Liam called magic walls. "This is the secret entrance," he explained, placing a blanket over 2 chairs. "You need a password to get in." "What's the password?" she asked, crouching beside him. He looked at her with mock seriousness. A hug. She opened her arms, and he darted in laughing. From the entryway, Grant returned early from a meeting. He was about to announce himself when he saw them. Liam curled under the makeshift tent, and Jenna reading a picture book about dragons with exaggerated voices. Grant didn't interrupt. He just stood there, arms crossed, taking in the scene. His son, who once stared blankly at walls, was now belly laughing at bubble-breathing dragons. Later that evening, after Ethan had gone to bed, Jenna stepped out onto the back porch, her notebook in hand. She liked writing here. Under the stars, with the scent of pine and clean night air. She barely noticed Grant approaching until he handed her a mug of tea and sat down beside her. "I like this spot," he said. "Emily used to come here when she needed to think." Jenna nodded. "It makes sense. It's peaceful. Like the world slows down." Grant sipped his tea quietly. "You blame yourself, don't you?" she asked gently, not looking at him. He turned slowly. "Yeah. I was on the phone with her right before the accident. 1 second we were talking, the next... silence." Jenna didn't respond. She just let the moment be. "I shut down after that," he continued. "From everyone. Even Liam." He looked at her, and something in his gaze softened. But you brought him back. And maybe you brought me back too. Her heart beat faster. She smiled. Small. Honest. I just listened. And that changed everything. The next morning, Jenna walked into the kitchen and found another surprise. An envelope on the counter. Inside was a printed enrollment form for a technical course in child psychology, both in person and online. When she brought it to Grant, her eyes were wide. On the drive home from the dinner, the silence in the car wasn't awkward. It was full. Jenna stared out the window, the city lights painting patterns on the glass. Grant's words echoed in her mind. I'm falling in love with you. She didn't know how to answer. Not yet. When they arrived, Grant walked around the car and opened her door. His hand lingered a little longer than usual. She gave him a soft, grateful smile. Liam was already asleep. Delia said he'd gone to bed early. Jenna tiptoed upstairs to check on him. He was curled up under his dinosaur blanket, his toy truck resting beside him. She pulled the sheet up to his shoulders and gently kissed his hair. Downstairs, she found Grant sitting in the living room, a glass of wine in his hand. The soft lamp glow made his features look tired, but peaceful. It's late, she said. I know. Couldn't sleep. She hesitated. Should I leave you alone? He looked up. Number stay. Just to talk. She sat down. Not too close, not too far. Do you regret what you said? She asked. He shook his head. I'd regret not saying it. I just don't know what to do with it yet, she admitted. I'm scared. Of me? No, she said quickly. Of me. Of trusting. Of hoping. He nodded. We don't have to label anything. Let's just be. She smiled. Thank you. The next morning, Liam bounded into the kitchen, messy-haired and barefoot. Is Jenna awake? She's on the porch, Delia said. He ran outside and found her with her notebook. Want to play? She smiled. Always. Can we build a ship today? A ship? Yeah. I dreamed we were sailing. You were the captain. Dad was the cook. Jenna laughed. The cook? I need to see that. Later that morning, when Grant came down, he found them building a ship out of boxes, tape, and sofa cushions. Jenna wore a paper hat. Liam held a spoon like a sword. Did I wake up in a cartoon? Grant teased. We're at sea, Liam yelled. You're the cook. Are you making pancakes? Grant raised an eyebrow. So I'm working now? Every ship needs a crew, Jenna winked. That afternoon, Jenna walked into Grant's office, holding the signed enrollment form and a folder of documents. It's official, she said. I'm enrolling in the course. Grant stood up, smiling wide. I'm proud of you. I'm still scared. But I think, if I wait to stop being scared, I'll never do anything important. He looked at her warmly. That's how you know it matters. As days passed, their lives began to merge more naturally. Liam asked Jenna to tuck him in. She started baking again. Grant came home earlier, just to catch more moments. One evening, as she was doing dishes, Grant walked in with a towel. Need help? You know how to dry dishes? She teased. I run $1 billion company. I can learn. They worked side by side until he asked, do you think people can find their way back, even if they're lost? Jenna thought for a moment. Only if they want to. And only if someone's waiting. He nodded. I was lost for a long time, after Emily. But lately, I feel like I'm seeing color again. She gently placed her hand on his. You never really lost it. You just forgot where to look. The next day, Jenna went downtown to buy course materials. When she returned, Liam was waiting in the garden with a wrinkled flower. It's for you, he said proudly. She knelt to hug him. It's perfect. Later, she handed Grant an envelope. This is what I didn't use. I only bought what I needed. You didn't have to. I wanted to. He looked at her. You're one of the most honest people I've ever met." That night, as she read to Liam, he fell asleep in her lap. Grant walked in, paused, then lifted his son gently into his arms. "He started smiling again because of you," he said softly. She whispered, "And maybe, so did you." They looked at each other for a moment. No words, just the quiet hum of something unspoken growing between them. The next morning, Liam woke up early. "Can Jenna walk me to school today?" he asked. "She already packed your lunch," Grant replied. Liam beamed. Later that night, as Jenna made tea in the kitchen, Grant leaned against the door frame. "I'm not in a rush," he said, "but I'm not giving up on you either." "I know," she said, her voice trembling with a smile. "That's what scares me, and what makes me stay." One Saturday morning, Liam ran into her room. "Can we surprise Dad?" "With what?" "Dinner. I want to make him smile." That evening, Grant walked into the dining room to find the table set with colorful napkins, Liam wearing an apron, and Jenna smiling beside him. "I cooked," Liam announced. "Then I have to try everything," Grant said, grinning. The dinner was simple, but laughter filled the air. Later that night, on the back porch, Jenna looked up at the stars. Grant sat beside her. "I'm not going anywhere," he said. "And one day, when you're ready, I'll ask you something important. Not because I need to save you, but because I want to build with you." She looked at him. "What if I'm already ready, and I just didn't know it?" He took her hand. "Then say yes when I ask." 3 weeks later, in a garden filled with soft music and string lights, Jenna said, "I do." Liam walked her down the aisle, holding her hand like he'd always belonged there. Grant's vows were simple. "You didn't just bring my wallet home. You brought me home." Jenna's reply, "You didn't save me. You saw me. And that's all I ever needed." Together, they became a family. A real one. And a year later, as Jenna sat under the same stars, now with a baby girl in her arms and Liam curled beside her, Grant whispered, "You still think returning that wallet was ordinary?" She smiled. "It was the beginning of everything." What did you think of Jenna and Grant's journey? Drop me in the comments if this story touched your heart. And don't forget to subscribe for more beautiful, real love stories just like this one. You said,